All right, guys, here we go. The 2025 NFL schedule has officially been released. So we're going to go through AFC today, NFC tomorrow. I will be recording them at the same time, just releasing them on 2 different days so that the podcast doesn't end up being too long. But the schedule is out, and we're going to do a quick visual run-through of each schedule and the amount of wins and how the season could play out for each team. Quick, concise, 16 teams, 30 minutes. Here we go. All right, guys, here we go. So the schedule release is out. We're going to do the AFC, and we're going to start, as always, in the AFC East with the Buffalo Bills. Now, looking at the schedule, something that really jumps out is the early part of the season, I believe, is where they're going to be able to set the tone for the rest of the year. Their bye week is week 7. And I think they have a very good chance of heading into that week 7 6-0. Their opening 6 games are Baltimore at home to open the season on Sunday Night Football. Huge matchup to open the year. Then they got the road game against the Jets, home against Miami, New Orleans, New England in October could be a dogfight, but I think it still will be a little bit of time. New England's not going to be that good yet. And then they're on the road in Atlanta for a Monday night game before their bye week. Honestly, they easily could be 6-0 heading into that 7th week. Now, after that, they do have a tough stretch, but it's a really weird tough stretch for them. So they come back and they play on the road against Carolina. No big deal. But then they've got their matchup November 2nd against Kansas City, also at home. They get Tampa Bay 2 weeks later at home. Back-to-back road games against Houston and Pittsburgh. Home against Cincinnati. At New England, at Cleveland. That New England game there in December, that one watch out for. That's when the offense for the Patriots, I think, will be gelling as well as it needs to. Look out for that one. The Browns, obviously not worried about. But then the December 28th game at home against Philly. And then they get a home game at the end of the year against the Jets. All in all, if we just do the big teams, okay, let's say we give them losses against Baltimore, Kansas City, and Philly. They're 14-3. And it's only if you give them the losses against the teams that everyone considers to be on their level, top tier elite teams. They get everybody at home, though. Baltimore's at home. Kansas City's at home. Philadelphia's at home. I know Philly can play in weather down there in, Philadelphia a little bit, but December 28th in Buffalo? That could be a blizzard. That plays into Buffalo's favor. I love this schedule for the Bills. I really do. And I think right now you're looking at a team that can be 14-3 and potentially win the AFC. Get the number 1 seed in the AFC. Now, you look in their own division. We're going to go with the team that they play in early on, week number 3, the Miami Dolphins. The Dolphins are in trouble. They have a stretch of games where they will probably go 0-4, and then they end the year potentially 0-4 as well. So they open up at Indianapolis, We'll get to the Colts in a little bit. Not going to comment on that too much. Their second game is at home against New England. Then they're at Buffalo. They get home against the Jets, at Carolina. Then they have a road matchup against the Chargers, a road matchup against the Cleveland Browns. Starting in Week 8, they are at Atlanta, home against Baltimore, Buffalo, and Washington, back to back to back. I've got Atlanta winning that game. Obviously, Baltimore, Buffalo, Washington, they go 0-4 through that stretch, heading into their bye week. Now, coming out of their bye week, Week 12 is their bye. Week 13, they get a home matchup against New Orleans. Should be a W. But then they are at the Jets. Jets could potentially be putting some things together by then. At Pittsburgh, we don't know what that's going to be. That one could be a joke and flexed out anyway. But then they have Cincinnati, Tampa Bay, and at New England to close the year. So to close the year, they're 0-3. They have an 0-4 in the middle. So best case scenario is 9-7. Not a chance. I'm sorry, best case scenario is 10-7. I'm thinking 7-10. They'll lose on the road to Buffalo in Week 3. I will give the Jets one of the two meetings against them, and New England easily could pull out, or Indianapolis can pull out one of the first 2 weeks, or they could lose both. I think Miami crumbles this year. And then you end up with another new coach. And the Dolphins continue to try to find what in the world to be able to do to get legitimate success. How about not sign a quarterback to a huge contract that was never worth it? That would have been a good start. All right, the New York Jets. This is going to be tough for Aaron Glenn. I was hoping they'd have it easier early on, but they've got a tough schedule to start out with. They're home against Pittsburgh and starting out against a team that is defense focused. That's my fear. They are defense focused. When the offense is still trying to get the offensive line to gel, Justin Fields, I don't like that opening game against a team that is so good on defense. Week 2 is against Buffalo. Week 3 is against Tampa Bay on the road. Week 4 is at Miami. Week 5, they're home against Dallas, but then they've got Denver the following week. They're home against Carolina, but they're at Cincinnati. They get their bye week in Week 9, then they're home against Cleveland. Then they have at New England, at Baltimore, Atlanta, Miami, at Jacksonville. Then they go to New Orleans and finish with New England at home and on the road in Buffalo. I really was hoping this team could get to 6 wins this year. I really was. I really was hoping this team could get to 6 wins. I think they can. If they can split with Miami, beat Carolina, Dallas, Cleveland, New Orleans. I just don't see much else, though. I just don't see much else. 6-11 is kind of really what I feel right now with the way that schedule plays out for them. Now, for the 4th team in the AFC East, the New England Patriots, the schedule lines up super nice. They open at home against Las Vegas. Mike Vrabel versus Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll trying to set everything up year 1. Mike Vrabel trying to set everything up year 1. Drake May, already there, established. Geno Smith, trying to get established. Ashton Genty, rookie running back. Travion Henderson, rookie running back. I want to watch that game. I really do. I want to watch that game. So here we go. We got Vegas week 1, at Miami week 2. Then they are home for Pittsburgh and Carolina. That Pittsburgh matchup, I don't worry about with them because they are the ones that have actually built a team ready to be able to play. Then they have an interesting stretch where they get 3 road games in a row, but 2 of them are winnable. You get at Buffalo, at New Orleans, at Tennessee, before coming back home for Cleveland. Then you have Atlanta, Tampa Bay, Jets at home on Thursday Night Football, at Cincinnati, and then home against the Giants. Their bye week is late, week 14. And for In most cases, giving Josh McDaniels a late bye week to be able to put some new stuff in to close out the year wouldn't be good. But they do have a first two games that are really tough. They've got Buffalo to come off the bye week, and then they've got at Baltimore. That Buffalo game, like I said when we did Buffalo, I'll give them a shot in that game. Because they're coming off their bye week, I will give them a shot in that game. 100%. That Baltimore game on the road, probably not. But then they close with the Jets in Miami, and I think they win those. I still think there's 10 wins on here. I absolutely think this team is a 10-7 team, and I think the schedule lines up correctly. This is the year. Sorry, I got something in my eye. I got something in my eye while I was riding home, and it keeps seeming to want to be there, and I can't get it out. But this lines up so that this team can learn what they need to learn and then gradually improve, because they get the Giants, they get the Browns, they get the Saints, they get the Panthers. And as much as I like what Canales has done in Carolina, it's still the Panthers on the road. You got to start winning at home before you really get trusted to win on the road. And that's kind of how I'm looking at everything. So there's the AFC East. Where are we at? 11 minutes? All right, we got to go faster. All right, Baltimore Ravens. Let's speed this up a little bit. Obviously, road game against Buffalo. Then they're home against Cleveland, home against Detroit, at Kansas City, home against Houston, home against the Rams. Then they have their bye week. Their bye week is week 7. But their first 6 games is a gauntlet. Buffalo, Detroit, Kansas City, Houston, the Rams. Baltimore has to get out of their 4-2. They have to get out of their 4-2 or better. They're at Kansas City. They're at Buffalo. They're home for Detroit, Houston, and the Rams. They have to get out of their 4-2 at minimum. They come back from their bye week against Chicago. Then they have road games against Miami, Minnesota, and Cleveland. Reverse it, then 3 home games. New York, Jets, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, all at home. Then they go on the road to Cincinnati, come home against New England, and then their final 2 games are at Green Bay and at Pittsburgh. If they get out of the top 4-2, they easily could also be looking at a 14-3, 13-4 season. But it is really going to depend on the first 6 games. Those first 6 games are vitally important for this team. Vitally important for this team. They could go 13-4, 14-3, but that first 6-game stretch is really difficult, especially if you're trying to figure out the defensive side of the ball still. All right, the Cincinnati Bengals actually look pretty good to be able to make a return if the defense can hold up, which I don't know if it can. Hendrickson isn't playing without a new deal. And honestly, the defense has got nobody on it. But they open up at Cleveland, W. Then they're home against Jacksonville. Back-to-back road games against the Vikings and Broncos. Home against Detroit. At Green Bay. Home against Pittsburgh. Home against the Jets in Week 8. Home against the Bears in Week 9. And then Week 10 is their bye week. Now, their gauntlet is right afterwards. At Pittsburgh, home against New England. At Baltimore. At Buffalo, home against Baltimore. Then they get at Miami and close with the Cardinals and Browns, both of which are at home. But the Cardinals are a team that I'm definitely going to be keeping my eyes on. They can win 10. They could easily be in the wild card mix. There's no reason they can't be, but it's going to depend on the defense. If the defense can't stop anybody because they have nobody on the defense, it's a moot point. You can score 27, 28, 31 points, but if you let up 34, you still lose. I have huge questions about the Bengals defense. When I get to the official predictions after training camp, when everything settles with the roster and depth chart, I mean, there's a very good possibility I could say, you know what, I don't think they're going to be able to hold up. Very possible. We know Zach Taylor and Joe Burrow are at odds. All right, the Cleveland Browns. They're playing for 2026, so I am not going to jump on them. We're just going to go down the list. home against Cincinnati to open the year, at Baltimore, home against Green Bay, at Detroit, home against Minnesota, at Pittsburgh, home against Miami, at New England, bye week in week number 9. Then they are at New York, home against Baltimore, at Las Vegas, home against the 49ers and Titans, at Chicago, home against Buffalo and Pittsburgh, and close it on the road in Cincinnati. All right, the last one is the Pittsburgh Steelers. This team currently doesn't have a quarterback. I guess prediction 3-14. Flacco starting. They're playing for 2026. 3-14. They're probably going to make some moves, get some more picks at the trade deadline. All right, Pittsburgh Steelers open up on the road against the Jets. Then they're home for a game against Seattle, at New England, home against Minnesota. Then they have their bye week early. Their bye week is week number 5. It is really early. And that does not play into their favor because they have a tough stretch. They get home against Cleveland, but then they're at Cincinnati, home against Green Bay, home against the Colts, at the Chargers, home against the Bengals, at the Bears, home against the Bills, at the Ravens. Big gauntlet. They could lose every game there. Then they get Miami at home. Then they're at Detroit, definitely an L. At Cleveland, and then they close the season out with a home game against Baltimore. All right, let's see. Yeah, that one much better. All right, so I got to run a little bit faster. Took too long with the AFC East. So this one I'm also going to take a little bit of time with the Indianapolis Colts schedule. So here's how I'm going to talk this out. There are patches with teams that have the strengths where the Colts are weakest. Okay? And this is how this season I think is going to play out. It is a ton of hot and cold. And I know Colts fans don't want to hear it. But how this schedule lined up is not good for us. It is not good. It would have been a lot better to have another 4-game smash series with the hardest opponents together and then coupled with on the outside. This doesn't really play in our favor. Here's why. We open up at home against Miami. Then Denver comes to town. And I know Colts fans that week are going to be like, look what we did last year. If it wasn't for this, we would have beat them. That was rookie year, Bo Nix. And year number 1 of setting up the team fully with Sean Payton. That defense just got Jahdae Barron and Hufanga and Greenlaw. So Denver at home in week 2. But then we have road games against the Titans, which we don't know exactly how they're going to look yet. At the Rams. Then we're home for the Raiders and Cardinals, and then back out west against the Chargers. So 2 LA trips in the first 7 weeks. Then we're home for the Titans. At Pittsburgh. We have the Berlin game against the Falcons. Our bye week is week 11. And then there's a little stretch that doesn't look good. But it's not the hardest teams. It's just 4 teams that are all going to be potentially vying for playoff spots. At Kansas City, home against the Texans. At Jacksonville, at Seattle. Then December 22nd, we are home against the 49ers, home against Jacksonville in week 17, and we close in Houston. I have us going 6-11. Atlanta in Berlin is the one you could convince me of 7-10. I don't like international games because last year I picked the international games correctly because I went with who got over there first. Coaches that leave on Tuesday to get over there on Wednesday have better success than the teams that leave on Friday to get there on Saturday. They don't play as crisp. They're not as ready to play. And that is becoming a theme. So I always pick those games the week of. So that game's a toss-up. So by itself, 6-10. 6-10. You could convince me of either 6-11 or 7-10 based off of that Atlanta game. But the schedule actually doesn't play in our favor because teams that like to play hard-nosed, pass-rushing defense, we play early while our offensive line is going to be trying to figure things out. the Chargers, the Cardinals, the Raiders, the Rams. The Titans always play us tough, and Denver. It's not a good start to the season, and the way the games are set up right now, it looks kind of bad. So I got us going 6-11 or 7-10. All right, the Jacksonville Jaguars. I have a lot of questions about this team. Hopefully, training camp will clear them. But here we go. They open up against Carolina. Huge help. Open up at home against Carolina. Then they're at Cincinnati, home against Houston, at San Francisco. They have a gauntlet here. Cincinnati 2, Houston 3, San Francisco 4, Kansas City 5, Seattle 6, and the Rams 7. They have a bad schedule. But that's what I wished the Colts would have had. All their biggest, toughest opponents are then sitting right there. You go into your bye week, you're tired, you got to come out really strong. You still got week 9, road against the Raiders, road against the Texans in 10. Then they got the Chargers, the Cardinals, the Titans, Colts in week 14, Jets at Denver, Colts and Tennessee. Honestly, sorry, Jags fans. I hope it's going to be better, but I'm predicting the same thing. 6-11 or 7-10. 6-11 or 7-10. All right, let's go to my division winner, the Houston Texans. They open up on the road at the Rams. That'll be a loss. But then they have a solid stretch for themselves. Home against Tampa on Monday Night Football, at Jacksonville, home against Tennessee. Should be able to get 3 W's right there. Then they're at Baltimore. They have an early bye week as well, which is normally bad for a team like Houston that deals with injuries. But hey, they come out of their bye week at Seattle, home against the 49ers, home against Denver, home against Jacksonville, at Tennessee, home against Buffalo, at Indianapolis, at Kansas City, home against Arizona, home against Vegas, at the Chargers, and then home against Indianapolis. So for the Texans, a lot of really good games, and I think this team is going to be anywhere between 10-7 and 12-5. 10-7 and 12-5 depends on who's injured on the offense, because the defense, we all know, is going to be outstanding. All right, the Titans, and then we'll get to the AFC West. Titans open up at Denver, then they're home against the Rams, the Colts. 3 road games in a row then after that in week 4. Houston, Arizona, and Vegas. Home against the Patriots, at Indianapolis, home against the Chargers. The bye week in week 10. Then home against Houston, home against Seattle, home against Jacksonville. Road games against Cleveland and San Francisco. Then home games with Kansas City, New Orleans, and then they close the year in Jacksonville. Over-under, I believe, was 5.5 wins. How this offense can play in the second half of the year, because I believe San Francisco is going to be weaker, and I think the second half of the season, the injuries will really start to dig in. The Jacksonville, Cleveland, San Francisco, and New Orleans, those 4 games in the second half of the season, I can easily see them pulling out. The Titans can pull it out. I think they'll pull out one against the Colts as well. They're looking right at the 5.5. They're looking at 5 wins, 6 wins, but I think they could get to 7 depending on what the offense looks like, especially in the second half of the year. Could they sweep Jacksonville? Could they steal a game like a game at home against Seattle? If it's a West team coming over here, could they do something like that? I think the second half after the bye week, stuff like that, you're going to have to watch for, because it easily could take place. All right, the last conference, the AFC West. The Denver Broncos open up with 2 AFC South teams, home against Tennessee, at Indianapolis. And then they have a 3-game stretch of playoff teams, at the Chargers, home against the Bengals, at the Eagles. Then they get 3 weeks where they should win all 3. Home against the Jets, home against the Giants, home against the Cowboys. So there's 3 W's right there in my mind right away. Week 9 is at Houston. Week 10, home against Vegas. Home against the Chiefs in week 11. Their bye week is week 12. Then they have road tilts against the Commanders and the Raiders, home against Green Bay, Jacksonville, at Kansas City on Christmas Day, and then they close the year at home against Los Angeles. If you just go splits, so let's just take Tennessee, Indianapolis, the 3 games in the middle there, Jacksonville, and then you just do splits. Okay, so let's say you split KC, you split Vegas, and you split Kansas City. You're a 9 or 10 win team. 9 or 10 win team. So you're fighting for the playoffs. That's the Denver Broncos schedule. The Kansas City Chiefs, their schedule lines up a little bit differently. They've got home games against the Chargers and Philadelphia to open the season. Then they have a road game against the Giants, home against Baltimore, at Jacksonville. 3 straight home games, home against Detroit, home against Vegas, home against the Commanders. Then they are at Buffalo, bye week, at Denver. So the bye week could really save them. And honestly, the second half of the season looks to be in their favor to close out the year. Indianapolis, at Dallas, home against Houston, home against the Chargers, at Tennessee, home against Denver, but then they close the year in Vegas, and we know how hard Vegas plays this team. The Kansas City Chiefs, depending on how they're getting old, and they don't play great in the season, and I don't think their defense is going to be improved enough to really make everything. The teams that they're playing are going to beat them. They are probably a 12-win team. If they split the Raiders, Broncos, and Chargers, which, by the way, I have everybody in that division splitting with everybody. If they split all those, they're 3-3 automatically. They'll lose to the Bills. The Lions will still beat them. That's 12-5. Best case scenario for them is 12-5. Worst case scenario, 10-7. Or you could really have a bad Super Bowl hangover and be even worse than that. It's possible. But the team that has the better schedule set up to be able to succeed for what they need to be able to accomplish is the Chargers, because they're front loaded and rear is probably where they're going to be the strongest. So they open up at home against Kansas City. At home, the Chiefs open up on the road in LA. I think that's a win for the Chargers. Then they go to Vegas week number 2, home against Denver. So 3 straight division games to open the year. And then they're at New York, home against Washington, at Miami, home against Indianapolis and Minnesota, at Tennessee, home against Pittsburgh, at Jacksonville. Bye week is week 12. Coming off of 6 games that you probably just won in a row. You get your bye week, you come back, you play Vegas at home, Philly at home, at Kansas City, at Dallas, home against Houston, and at Denver. If you split the 3-3, and then you add in the the 6 that I already threw in there, plus Dallas 7, you're sitting at a minimum of 10-7. Also a maximum of, I believe, 12-5. I believe this team actually 13-4 is really the maximum I see. They could get to 13-4. But that is minimum 10-7. Maximum 13-4. It's kind of what I see. All right, Las Vegas Raiders. Let's close this out. They open up on the road. Pete Carroll going back to New England. At New England, home against the Chargers. At Washington, home against the Bears. At the Colts, home against the Titans. At the Chiefs, their bye week is week number 8. Come off their bye week at home against the Jags. Then they're at the Broncos. Home against Dallas and Cleveland. There's 2 wins back-to-back. At the Chargers, home against Denver. At Philly, at Houston. Home against the Giants, and home against the Chiefs. This is going to be a team where it's going to be a lot of middle, the mid part of the league is going to be taking each other on. So the games against Chicago, Tennessee, even I'll even say, the way that, remember, we got 3 wins anyway. So they're at Indianapolis. We already start with 3 wins because everybody's 3-3 in this division this year. I'll give them Dallas, Cleveland, the Giants. I'll give them home against Jacksonville. There's 4. So there's potential. Right there is 7 wins. Split the division, those 4 wins. In my estimation, the worst they could be is 7-10. The best they can be probably is 9-7. This is the best division in football this year. The division has the best coaching staff, bar none, and it has some of the best GMs. All of them are easily top 10. This is a division you do not want to mess with. It will be brutal in these division games, and the Raiders easily could sneak back in to that wild card playoff picture at the end of the year, or be sitting there in the middle of the year needing to be knocked out of position. Very, very viable. Very viable. All right, like I said, there's nothing official about any of this. This is just looking at it, giving the overview of what the schedule is. I think the NFL nailed a lot of their primetime games. We will go over that in a third podcast, which will actually be released Monday, as we look at the premier games that the NFL scheduled and kind of what you can tell they did, trying to get certain teams and names out. Obviously, my short last night, I complained about the Cowboys. But that is going to be it for this. I'm going to end this podcast, and then I will record the next one, actually, so that both of them are ready to go. As always, thank you so much for hanging out. Make sure to like, subscribe. Make it the best Friday you can tomorrow. It's Friday. Have a fantastic Friday. I'll have the second part of the podcast tomorrow night. But for now, have a great day. Make it the best one you can. For Sports Talk with Hawk, with the AFC initial schedule reaction, I'm Hawk, and I'm out. Have a great night.